Okay, final video for exercise 2C. We have asteroids that you can destroy and they explode in flames that create new asteroids. We have an enemy that moves in a sine wave and shoots directly at the player. And so now what we want to do is have the player die and explode and then respawn. So this part is a lot like a bunch of other things we've done, but we need to do a few things to make sure that it feels good for the player. So in player, I am going to add my custom event, which is called hit. It does take one argument because our hit arguments have a damage. And like many asteroids games, I'm going to assume that the damage is 1, or it takes one hit and then explodes. So I could subtract health, I could add health, but really I'm just going to explode it. But I am going to add a variable, because we have to track a state, because to set this up, when the player is destroyed, we want to stop the player moving. We don't want the player to be able to shoot a bullet. We want the player to basically have no control while the explosion is happening, and we want the ship to disappear, and then we want the ship to reappear and give player back control. So to do that, we need one graph variable called isDying. That is a Boolean, and it defaults to unchecked or false. And the first thing we're going to do is decouple on update and do an if and drag in isDying. And if it's false, we can do whatever we normally do. So while it's false, total control, all this happens. While it's true, nothing happens, no true. So we default to false, the ship is not dying, and then when the player's hit with the enemy bullet, we are going to set isDying to the Boolean literal checked or true. Now it's true. So when the player gets hit, none of this will work anymore. And then we are going to add our subgraph. Don't add node, subgraph. We're going to make it a graph. We are going to do our subgraph, which is make explosion. So we'll make the explosion, but we don't want the explosion to sit there and the player ship to just be sitting there dead in the water. That feels bad. So we're going to do two things. We are going to sprite render enabled, set enabled unchecked. So that will, you can enable and disable components, which means they will do their stuff or not. We are also going to collider 2D, box collider 2D. Find it in here. Set enabled also false, so it won't move, it won't be visible, and also will not do trigger events. And then we will wait 2 seconds. Why not? We'll say 2. At the end of 2 seconds, we will reverse this process, turn them back on, checked is true, and then set is dying to Boolean literal false. Let me drag all this down so it's visible. So when the player is hit with the enemy bullet, it says it's dying. It will explode. It will turn off all control and all visible stuff, and then restart. Let me make sure that works, and then I will explain why we do certain things. So we're going to let the bullet shoot. Huh. Okay. No errors. So I'm going to start rotating. Oh, that's interesting. Well, I'm going to show you how to debug. So it's obviously doing this. Well, I assume it's doing that. Oh. Right, okay, so completed. So here's what it did. I did a bug. So it actually went through all this, turned everything off, did the timer, but then when the timer started, instead of completed, it turned it back on. So in the same frame, it turned it off and turned it back on. Let's make sure that assumption is correct. Player explodes, player returns. But I probably don't want it to return where it started. So let's do transform set position, and I'm just going to set to the center of the screen, which is 0, 0, 0, and then also transform set rotation, and then I'm going to do my quaternion literal, which is all zeros. So this will make it feel better. No matter where I'm rotated or where in the screen I am, let's rotate. Ship will hit it, it'll explode, and then we will reappear here, center of the screen. There is a little bug there. If I'm moving, my exhaust will continue to be visible. So that I will leave to the exercise of the reader. You can also turn off the exhaust when this hit does. You do that in the movement code. So you may be wondering, why don't I game object destroy the player and then reinstantiate it? The reason is maybe the player is keeping track of points or doing a variety of things that I just don't really want it to actually totally go back to 0 and then come back. So that's why instead of destroying things, sometimes you actually just turn it off and maybe even move it away so it'll never be seen. So you have those pieces of memory intact if you need them again in the future. So that, finally, is the entirety of lesson 2C. I'm sorry that it's so long, but a lot of this I hope you will now see how we have pieces that we combine together in different configurations, which gives us a bunch of different behaviors. So sending damage, destroying things, taking damage, we can use that across all 3 of our objects. And we can actually make new objects which are very similar and like move in different ways. So that is exercise 1C.